Hi, this is Amy Jo Goddard, and I have been teaching sexual empowerment and sexuality for over 20 years. I'm the author of Women on Fire and Lesbian Sex Secrets for Men. And today I wanted to talk about fear and sexuality. Fear and sexuality are almost intrinsically connected for most people. And that's because most of us learn about sexuality through a lens of fear. Because the way that we treat sexuality in our culture is very fear based. It's often all about like, what are the things we need to avoid? What are the things that could happen? What are the things that could go wrong? If I don't get married, I might lose my partner. Um, so many things. Many of them are, I would say the majority of them are great myths. And, there is some real danger and violation that many of us experience around sexuality. So it makes sense that we would have our sexuality running a current with fear. So it's almost like these wires of like fear and sexuality get crossed and entangled, and it can be very hard for many of us to disentangle them and to see sexuality for what it is without all of those ideas that are very fear-based and very often very shame-based attached to our sexuality. So what that can look like is feeling like, well, if I express my real desires about sexuality, something bad is going to happen because maybe we were shamed when we did express a desire that was authentic. That might feel like, oh, well, if I dress sexy, or if I express my sexuality, or if I'm free in my body, even something might happen to me. Because I have had experiences of being violated, or I've had experiences where my sexuality was put on display in a way that didn't feel good to me. And so I want to avoid that from happening again. And so I'm just going to put my sexuality away, and then I won't have to deal with that. And I think that that's what a lot of people do. I know that it's what a lot of people do because I work with people all the time, and I work particularly with women around their sexuality and how to be more in their bodies and how to accept and embrace and explore their own desires, and how to really figure out what is authentic for them as sexual people. I think a lot of times people are in long-term relationships or relationships that they really want to keep, and they feel like they have to be something sexually in order to keep the relationship. So again, their whole sexual dynamic in the relationship, or their whole sexual expression in the relationship, is based on fear. It's actually not based on what they really want. It's based on, oh, well, if I don't express myself in this particular way as a sexual being, or if I don't say that I like these sexual things that my partner likes, they're going to run away. I'm going to lose them. So we come by this faulty wiring, if you will, very honestly. There are many, many ways in which fear is put into us around sexuality. Certainly, if you grew up with any kind of more fundamentalist religious upbringing, or more conservative religious upbringing that doesn't really embrace sexuality, you've probably heard messages of fear. If you had abstinence-only education in school, or if you were taught that you had to abstain from sex because you had to avoid all of these horrible things that could happen, like sexually transmitted infections and unplanned pregnancies, and they never talk to you about pleasure and the good things, then you've had that fear instilled in you. And, and of course, with like technology now, there's like this whole new host of fears that are being propagated about sexuality. And so I wanted to talk with you about that today, because I think that what happens for most people is that because those wires get crossed, because fear and sexuality get so interlinked for them, people will often simply avoid sexuality altogether, or they will express a sexuality that is inauthentic and isn't really what they want. And then we end up in situations where we have consent violations, or we have regretted sexual experiences. And then that muddies the water even more, because now we've had some other experiences around sex or sexuality that don't feel great. And so, see, sexuality must be the problem. Sexuality is not the problem, and sexuality is not about fear. Sexuality is about expansion. It is about beauty. It is about creation, right? Your sexual energy is your creative energy. It comes from the same well within you, and you use that energy to create all the things that you're here to create in your life. And so if you're locked up in fear, then probably your creativity is going to get stuck. Your projects and the things that you want to move forward are going to get stuck, and your relationships are going to get stuck. So what do we need to do is the question, right? To move through that. One is to acknowledge the fear. And here's another tricky thing with sexuality and fear, is that fear feels the same in the body as excitement, right? We get a lot of the same cues in our body when we're excited that we get when we have some fear and anxiety coming up. And so sexuality also creates excitement in us. And so sometimes actually we might be experiencing the excitement of sexuality, but we're so used to feeling the fear around sexuality that we experience the excitement as fear. And so then when we're having a good time, when good things are happening, we're not even able to allow ourselves to experience that. It's so deep. There's so much to it. So this is a disentangling process that we all have to do if we want to really live in the fullness of our sexuality and the positivity and the expansion that sexuality is there to give you. That sexuality is the most expansive energy there is on the planet. Sexual energy by nature is expansive, right? It literally, out of like 2 cells, can create whole new human beings, right? It's the juice, it's the life force, it's the fire that I named my book Woman on Fire after, right? It's that fire that is inside of us that really fuels our life force and what we're here to do in service to our world, to our lives, to our families, to our communities, all of that. So I want to really invite you, if you're experiencing some fear around your sexuality, to face it, to look it in the eye and start to ask yourself, what is this really about? And are the fears things that are real fears in your life right now, or are you living in a fear of something that maybe happened a long time ago, or something that's never happened that is like kind of an unfounded fear? And yet you're operating from that place anyway because of whatever reason, wherever that came from. And that's the thing to look at. It's like, well, wow, whose voice is that? Where did that come from? So I know that people often don't take steps to confront these things because it feels scary, right? Because the fear comes up. And actually, one of the most amazing parts of our own growth is facing our fears. I've been in a phase of that right now. I think we all go through different phases of facing our fears. I'm not facing them so much around sexuality, but I'm facing them in other parts of my life. And, fear has something to teach us. So there's an opportunity to take a step. I would love to hear from you. I work with coming up. It's the Fire Woman Retreat, where we do the very experiential work that allows us to move right through our fear and get to the other side of it so that we can actually have the glory and the beauty and the fun and the play and the juice that I think most of us want when it comes to our sexuality. I mean, we know it's there for that. And yet if you don't have it in your life, if you're not experiencing it, it can become a habitual practice to push it to the side and just decide that you don't get to have that or deny yourself from having that. So in the spirit of not denying ourselves, in the spirit of that expansion of sexuality, if you identify as a woman or a non-binary person, identified female at birth, please come to Fire Woman Retreat. I would love to have you at Fire Woman Retreat. You can take a look at firewomanretreat.com and see what it's all about. And if that doesn't work for you, please send us a message, or we will hop on a call and see if there's maybe some other ways that we could support you. And if you just have other ways or are doing it on your own, that's wonderful too. And so I hope that what I've said today could be helpful in illuminating some of what I know holds people back, because I hear it all the time. So thanks for listening, and Have a wonderful rest of your day. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would love if you would subscribe, and you'll get more videos like this on a regular basis. Sending you much love. Again, this is Amy Jo Goddard, and till next time, be whole, be fulfilled, and acknowledge that your sexual life force is a powerful, powerful force.